Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys Football, giving you guys kind of our recap, instant reaction of the Michigan TCU game. Gave ourselves the night to kind of think about it, didn't just jump on and talk about it. Again, before we get into it, though, I just want to say thank you guys for the support, especially the Michigan fans. It's been an awesome season. You guys know we rock with Michigan. We talk a lot of Michigan on the podcast. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Again, you guys have been awesome. We love the best thing is talking Michigan football with you guys in the comment section. That is why we do this. So we really do appreciate all the support. And if you do enjoy it, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, I'm going to kick it off to you. Instant takeaways from a very disappointing game last night.
You know, this one hurts, I'd say, way more than last year. I mean, last year we ran into a Georgia team that was obviously just way better than Michigan, way more talented at pretty much every spot. And I don't think anyone thought we really had much of a shot. So when they beat us pretty bad, it was like, oh, well, it's still a great season. We're kind of moving in the right direction, all that. And I will say all that still applies. Like, I'm not trying to say, like, I'm really in the dumps, but it just felt, I don't know. If you watch that game, I'm not convinced TCU's the better team. And I'm not saying, like, I think a lot of Michigan fans probably think TCU's terrible still. I never really believed it. I still don't think it. I think TCU is a very complete team and certainly belonging in that top tier of college football. But, I mean, to keep the game within 6 points after doing what Michigan did, throwing 2 pick sixes and getting stopped inside the 5 for no points twice, I'm not convinced we should have lost that.
That's the most frustrating part is that this was the worst Michigan has played in the last 2 years. And it was in a massive moment where you're playing a team that you're 8.5-point favorites against to get to the national championship. That's the part that stings the most. And you look at the score and you said it best, 2 pick sixes, fumble on the goal line, and then go for it on 4th and goal and get 0 points out of it. And you still only lost by 6 points. And it's one of the things that not bothers me the most, but is frustrating is just we kind of went away from what got us here. Really, really physical up front, running the football and playing good defense. We played this game how TCU wanted it to be played. A shootout where it was kind of a track race. And I think we had to because we got down early, but it was frustrating that that's not the brand Michigan wants to play. And that's kind of, it seems like how we ended up losing this game.
Yeah, and that's, again, the thing. I mean, I guess you could be encouraged that when Michigan had to go into a very much up-tempo, spread you out and throw the ball,
yeah,
they did do it. I mean, of course, not to excuse the 2 pick sixes because those were clearly 2 plays that probably are very much part of the demise of this game. But, I mean, aside from that, he played, I thought, incredible, like really good.
JJ made a lot of good throws, and I was just surprised we couldn't run the football on this TCU team. We talked about it in our preview that this 3-3-5 defense, if they wanted to stay in that, they were going to get ran on and ran on in a big way. And we started off with a 60-yard run to Donnie Edwards, and I'm thinking this is how I thought it would go. And after that, I mean, we couldn't really run the football that well.
I think that's something people kind of underrate, the fact that when we ran the ball really well like that, it was very much behind Blake Corum. I mean, he was the guy who was, when you needed a hard 5, he was getting hard 5. So I think Donovan Edwards isn't quite there yet in terms of his game being that when you need to grind out yards, he'll grind them out. And I think it's gotten better since his freshman year, and I think it'll get better next year. It's not like to say I don't think he can do it, but obviously a year younger and still developing. I mean, not having Blake in that type of game, I think, is huge because he's ultimately the guy who is. I mean, the offensive line's great, but when you need a hard 5, Blake's the guy who's getting you the hard 5.
And it's just we just have such a lack of depth behind Donovan Edwards. I mean, it tells you so much when we bring in a dude who's played linebacker for most of the year in Khalil Mullings, and he's taking the goal line carries because we don't trust any other running back on our team. CJ Stokes, like you're high on, but he's a true freshman. He had some fumbling issues, and we ended up having to go to a linebacker who has only carried the ball 9 times up until this time. And it's not that I don't trust him. It's unfortunate that he had that fumble, but the lack of depth at that running back position after Blake's gone down, Donnie Edwards was forced to take a lot more carries than I think he's comfortable with. and it worked out against Purdue. It worked out against Ohio State, but I think it caught up to us a little bit against TCU. What I kind of want to talk about a little bit more now is we're on to 2023, and this is kind of it's the most exciting part of the season is kind of talking about the future. And I think the future, it's unarguably very, very bright. We did very well in the transfer portal. Maybe talk about some key guys that might be leaving, how we're going to refill them. And there's a chance that we run it back with a very similar team, but there's also a chance that a lot of these guys do decide to go to the pros because, quite frankly, they deserve it, and they've played that way.
Yeah, well, I think the thing that's going to keep is, I think, a good chunk of the nucleus. I mean, Sandra's still back. JJ and Donovan both back. Blake Corum, I'm hoping he's back. It sounds like there's a chance, which I wouldn't have thought was remotely possible a couple weeks ago. But, I mean, if he's back, that's huge. And then, again, guys like Junior Colson and some emerging guys like a Mason Graham. I think Michigan's going to return a really talented team and add some depth in the portal. Not even depth, but like guys we need. I mean, we probably do need a true alpha dog pass rusher, and I do like Mike Morris, but he's not really built to be that standout edge rusher. He's big, he's not wildly athletic, and his game is good, but I think we do need a Isaiah Johnson, I should say, type guy who can.
Josiah Stewart coming from Coastal. Yeah,
Josiah Stewart, my bad.
He's that's kind of, I think, their biggest struggle on defense was when we started to play some of the better teams. Our pass rush looked really, really good early when we were kind of playing some of the non-power fives, some of the weaker teams in the Big Ten. There was a reason why Michigan had to blitz so much against TCU, and that was because we can't really generate a consistent pass rush with the four we had. I think that needs to be kind of the biggest thing that we address. And Josiah Stewart coming back. I also really hope Brady Greger comes back. I think he's a guy that showed a lot of flashes. You get him in for a fifth year, I think he can make some noise. Yabi Oki is another guy that is said he's coming back, and he'll be a guy that you can develop. And very, very confident with Mike Olson taking those guys on the defensive line and turning them into pass rushers. But if there was one thing I think we were improved on, and this is what we talked about coming into the season, we were improved on every single aspect of this defense besides the pass rush. And it was hard to take a step forward after you lose a guy like Aiden Hutchinson and you lose a guy like David Ajabo, but not having kind of an alpha dog off the edge who can create pressures kind of on his own, just beat tackles, I think kind of hurt us, and we had to start blitzing a little bit more, and then we kind of got burned on the back end a few times.
Yeah, so that's to me, I think, honestly, I think the next biggest spot is I think we got to be a little more athletic at the linebacker spot, and I'm sure that's why they went and got Ernest Hausman. I mean, you watch how he plays. He's got the chance. Him and Colson, I think, have the chance to be one of the best linebacker duos in the country. And Colson, he played outstanding yesterday.
Very good.
Played outstanding all year. But I think he could use a running mate who's more in his league and is going to be a surefire pro. And I love Mike Barrett and everything he's done for Michigan. But I think to upgrade that linebacker spot, I think would be very helpful, especially in these games when you're playing athletic teams. Like
and just to add depth. I mean, when we put Mullings back on the offensive side of the football, I mean, true freshman Jimmy Rolder was coming in to provide that depth. That's not necessarily a spot you want to be in, and that's nothing against Jimmy Rolder. I think he actually looked really, really good as a true freshman this year, but the idea of playing a true freshman who hasn't played a lot of snaps in big games like this, I think can kind of catch up to you. My focus is on the offensive line because I still think that is going to be the identity. I think this defense is going to be very good. When you look at Will Johnson coming back, Mikey Sandstrom coming back, Rod Moore coming back, Makari Page probably coming back. Like I really like our defense, especially on the back end. I think you can get some depth on the defensive line, but I'm kind of focused more on this offense because this is where it could get a little hairy where if Keegan and Zinter decide to go to the draft, where Ryan Hayes and Olu are already leaving, that's now we're replacing four guys up front on the offensive line. How we're going to do that, we addressed it through the transfer portal, and then some of the young guys who I'm confident in, but they're going to have to come up and step up as first-year starters next year.
Yeah, and I know. I think one guy you're super confident on is El Hadi. I mean, when he's played, he's looked really good. He's got the look of a high draft pick, I think, at the guard or possibly tackle. I don't know if they'll ever kick him out, but he's obviously been playing more guard now. So I think I'd like to think that position again is just going to keep rolling. assuming Schroen more plays, it feels like he's just done a really good job developing linemen. And then I think the big thing for Michigan is to continue to build a pass game. And honestly, I think our wide receivers probably just need to get better. They just need to play better and more consistent football across the whole year, because that's probably the one thing that we were missing was big time wide receiver play. And I know I've been talking about it as those three freshmen who are waiting in the wings, kind of with Darius Clemens, Walker, and Tyler Morris. I think those guys can be really, really good. And I'm hoping to see more of them next year, because I think we need some guys to hit some big plays and be a little more explosive in the pass, because even that'll help open the run game up.
Yeah, the wide receiver plays was just kind of like inconsistent. Like against Ohio State, Cornelius Johnson has the game of his life, and I thought the wide receivers were relatively good.
I mean, Ronnie Bell was incredible yesterday. Again, it's not to take anything away, but it just, I mean, there were a lot of times where just nobody was open too. So there's like, as much as we hit some big ones, and obviously JJ's legs certainly helped out with that, and Ronnie Bell is awesome, and Roman Wilson was really good, but there are too many plays where it just feels like you don't have the guy who's just constantly open, like a Chris Olave for Ohio State or some of these teams that can throw the Marvin Harrison. Even
I think that's the biggest thing is like when you look at teams that have won national championships, and you could even point to TCU, and like Quentin Johnston's been that guy for them. The Alabama teams last year, Jameson Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., the Chris Olaves, the Garrett Wilsons, having like an alpha wide receiver when you need 3rd and 8 and you need someone to make a play and create some separation, you have a guy that you can go to. There was never like Ronnie Bell, I think, was as close as it was to a guy that in a big play, that's who we were going to. He's going to go to the NFL draft and trying to replace a guy like that. I think still, like, we play a lot of 12 personnel. We play a lot of 2 tight end sets. Colson Loveland, I think, is going to be an absolute dog for us next year. He's probably going to be one of the better tight ends in the country. And it's when you're talking pass catchers, Michigan tight ends make plays. But I do agree with you that I wish, something we talked about for a while in the beginning of the year is the lack of like that vertical explosive passing game.
But it's not even just the vertical. It's like, can you just win on a hitch route on a 3rd and 5 or whatever you need to do to get open on the 3rd downs? Because that's honestly a big part of where you see JJ struggle is when he's waiting and looking, and you see the all 22, they show a replay and you see 5 guys blanketed. And I don't get the sense there's enough winning one-on-one matchups with that wide receiver core. And because you were relying so much on tight ends and in play action and stuff to win, it was very hard, it felt like at times, to drop back and get guys winning.
Yeah, I'm with that. In terms of looking at our offense, and we'll probably close it out on this one, this was as fun of a Michigan offense the last couple of weeks, as fun of a Michigan offense as we've seen. Like beating Ohio State and beating Purdue in the Big Ten championship. And even today, or last night, this offense looked awesome at times. And obviously you want to avoid those 2 pick sixes, and you got to clean up their red zone offense. That's something we didn't talk about. That needs to get cleaned up because it wasn't just a problem against TCU. It reared its head when we needed it, but it's been a problem all year.
I know. We just kept kicking. Oh, no, you guys, it's just blips on the radar. We can score in the red zone. We can run it.
No, and it became a problem when we needed it most. There's just no excuse to be as poor at scoring touchdowns. And obviously Jake Moody's been awesome. We're going to have to replace him. I don't want to see the kicker that much next year because we should be scoring touchdowns when we get inside the 10, inside the 20. It was a huge problem all year for Michigan. We're moving the ball between the 20s and we get inside the 20. And
I mean, even that, do you think that comes a little bit like, well, that's when you need your wideouts to be great. I mean, they don't have as much room. It's like, yeah, I get we got some guys who can run down the field and make some catches, but like you got to be able to win a 5-yard route and just do it. And obviously, I don't think we saw enough of that this year. I think, again, I'm very optimistic about what we've seen. I mean, Darius Clemens in the spring game, and I thought Tyler Morris, I wish he played a little more. He made at least one big catch I can remember against Rutgers, but we need those guys to come in and I think change the way we can win routes.
And we'll close on this because I think this is when you're looking at what's the most optimistic part of 2023 is JJ McCarthy didn't practice pretty much at all during spring ball or the summer. had that shoulder injury. Then was splitting in camp, splitting reps with Cade McNamara, which is seems like it was years ago, but that was happening in the offseason. JJ comes in as quarterback one with all his wide receivers, and you're building that chemistry, you're building that timing. I think that's the most. I mean, we saw JJ play his best couple games, obviously outside the 2 interceptions, in the last 3 games. This offense looks to be much more explosive than it was at the beginning of the season. Now you give JJ a full offseason to develop with some of these young wide receivers that me and you are both very talented and very high on with that talent. I think that you could see a Michigan offense that looks a little different. It looks a little bit more explosive. It's going to be a really exciting 2023 season. And when you look at other teams across, like CJ Stroud, not going to be back at Ohio State, they ask some quarterback questions. The landscape for Michigan, you got to be optimistic about.
You just got to be optimistic about where the team's going. I get this loss hurts, but it shouldn't take away from the fact that, I mean, you tell us 2 years ago we'd be 13-1 and with 1 loss in the playoffs to a 6-point in a 6-point game that was played in the way it was, where 2 years ago this Michigan team folds and they lose by 40 points. That's what they were doing. But again, you got Harbaugh. It looks like he's kind of found his groove in this college football landscape. And yeah, I mean, I'm hurting out, but I'm still fired up for what's going on. That's just
24 hours. We're starting to talk. We're finishing up 2023 recruiting trail. Get some guys in the transfer portal. Let's get geared up for 2023 again. Appreciate you guys checking us out. Very disappointing loss, but we do appreciate all the support, especially you Michigan fans have shown throughout the season. So if you do enjoy the content, subscribe to the channel. Let us know in the comment section who we're rocking with 2023, what players are going to be making an impact, and we'll talk to y'all later.